What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. We're repping America, the center, common sense, and freedom from egotistical, power-hungry politicians. So, I'm recording a little late today because I spent a lot of the morning feeding a peacock that wandered up to my porch. Promptly took a dump on the porch, but I fed it out of my hand. It was pecking away at my fingers and stuff. You know, I guess I'm just like a little bit of a bird whisperer because I've always had good relationships with birds, animals like that. I don't let politics tell me how I'm going to be as a person. I'm my own person, and I pick my politics based on what I think makes sense. And that's why Purple State exists, because logic, center, common sense, it makes sense. So we're going to look at some failed policies. But I want to remind you, this isn't about trying to make the Democrats look bad. This isn't about trying to make the Republicans look bad. This is about pointing out the flaws in their delivery. I'm up for an experiment, but when the experiment fails, you got to yank the plug. So we're going to start yanking the plug, so let's get this thing popping. Yeah! Peacock fever. We're going to kick this off with Biden ending a speech with God Save the Queen. Look, man, hey, I know if you watch my videos, you know I'm always, I'm a gaffe machine myself. I'm usually faded. So I'm a little bit stumble-bumble, but I'm just a fucking whack job sitting in his home studio trying to change the world. I'm not the president of the United States. It is a bad look, but I just bring it up because it's funny. I mean, the Queen's dead, and, quite frankly, it's a bit iffy to say that in America, but whatever, man. 4th of July. Yeah, it's coming up on that time. Woo! Looking forward to it. Yeah, here's a troubling, this DNC generously offers to host rally for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. by Grassy Knoll. Bit oof on that one, but it's becoming clear that there are now three parties that are vying for superior control of America: the Republicans, the Democrats, and the far left Democrats. I believe they are pretty much three separate groups at this point. I think the one thing that they don't like about Robert F. Kennedy is the same thing they don't like about Trump. He's not controllable. And I don't think they're going to do much to support this guy, even though he is somewhat middle of the road. He's like a mansion or a cinema. The good old Democrat, I guess you can say. Well, we'll see. One thing I bring up a lot, not on the show, but in real life, and I decided I'll share it here, is, a simple way of looking at things is something that I value. And one way to simplify why sometimes I take on the subjects I take on is because of the way people are presenting their ideas and their experiments, so to speak. I sum it up this way. There's a big difference between Black Lives Matter and no room for racism. Over in England, before the start of every professional soccer match, they do the national anthems, the players take the field, they line up, and then they take a knee, and the announcer comes over the PA and says, the players are now going to take a knee to remind us all that there is no room for racism. That's inclusive. No room for racism, period. Not specifying a group, not saying it in a way that can be contradicted, much like we had, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. How do you argue no room for racism? There's nothing to argue. It's presented in a nice, clean, concise way. Not designed to be inflammatory or attention-getting or clickbaiting. It's just a simple saying, no room for racism. But when the White House does something like this, and put up the trans LGBT flag, and then they violate U.S. flag code by putting it in the center of the display instead of on the side where it belongs, and that's where it belongs by code. We are Americans first. That's who we are living here in America. I rail against a lot of stupid Democrat ideas. I live in the Democrat stronghold of California, so I would love for their policies to work. But a lot of the policies and a lot of the responses that they have been giving lately are just inflammatory, and they're not going to solve the problem, because when you piss people off in the name of educating them, you only harden their souls. That's it. Let's move on. I was just talking about responses. Pierre here claims it's dangerous to question the safety of female athletes competing against males in testy exchange. I find it funny that they put the headline testy exchange. I wonder if that was on purpose. If that's on purpose, you get a lot of purple points for that one. That's a hell of a pun. But, they were asking, a reporter was asking about the Biden administration's stance on, biological men competing against females, who self-identify in some cases. And she said it was dangerous, that it was labeling transgendered kids as dangerous. No, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to allow a developed male to compete against women. In some sports, not as much, Paquito. In some sports, grande. It's very, very dangerous. I myself do not want to stamp out transgendered people. I don't. I want to help them. I want them to get the help that they need. I want them to lead fruitful, productive, happy lives. I want everybody to be happy, so that includes them, right? But I'm also looking out for the interest of half the population, women. There are certain attributes to the whole idea of a man becoming a woman that do get in the way of other people's rights or violate other people's rights. We need to go about this with some logic, not just fucking feelings. But when the response is that the reporter is essentially being transphobic, it's not helpful. But this is where they're really helpful. They try to cover up things here, CNN bends over backwards to blame Bud Light's downfall on anything but the boycott. Even suggests Cinco de Mayo. Look, I've made a video. You can look it up. I don't support the Bud Light ban. I don't drink, so there's nothing I can do about it, man. I've been sober for over 3 decades now. So Bud Light, Modelo, I've never even had a Modelo. But the fact remains that if you partner with somebody who is then going to upset your core group, why do it? It's not like Dylan Mulvaney is the only transgender influencer. Dylan is a bit sketch. Not a great choice. What the Dodgers did by having the drag show that, they at the very least dress up as Catholic nuns in a heavily Catholic area, it's just a dumb move. It doesn't help. They ended up presenting him a community hero award in front of a virtually empty stadium because the protesters were out front. And most of the protesters were Catholics. And they were chanting, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Because at the end of the day, that's the way it should be approached. If you really believe that somebody is violating God's law, you should pray for them. You should pray for their forgiveness. Right or wrong. Right or wrong. Whether you believe that, Jesus was the Son of God and walked the earth, or that men can get pregnant. Both ideas are a bit difficult for one side or the other to swallow. And that's all it is. And that's all it should be. If you're protesting these things simply because you don't like trans people, then you're wrong. Oddly enough, Modelo is pretty much owned by Anheuser-Busch, who owns Bud Light. So, I mean, it hurts in the U.S. market, but in the world market, Bush owns them. So we're going to touch on this a little bit, the DeSantis-Newsom feud. What I like here is that they go back and forth. Your state, their state, blah, blah, blah. Red state, blue state, green state, purple state. But anyhow, I like how DeSantis said, hey, shut the hell up and announce that you're running. Announce that you're running, bro. You're running around doing a presidential campaign in secrecy. Bullshit, Gavin. If you want any chance of standing up and winning, you better stand up, dude. You better show that you got sacked. Because if you ain't got sacked, then nobody's going to take you seriously. Your own party is going to turn on you. You just watch, buddy. That's what you're trying to do. Forget trying to convince Republicans to vote for you. You got to convince Democrats to vote for you. But yeah, DeSantis, he's got huge problems in his state. I mean, like, huge problems. With those problems, he has a serious fixation on the state of Florida. Well, yeah, because that is their popular thing, their popular retort. San Francisco's crumbling. Oh, what, you want to live in Mississippi? Well, no, I want to live in San Francisco, but I just don't want human filth all over the ground. I don't want to worry about getting stabbed and robbed when I go to put my trash cans out. Sure, it would be nice to just be able to drive through the city without fear of maybe getting shot, carjacked, whatever. Whether or not you stand a chance of getting robbed, mugged, raped, whatever, right? You're still going to be shitlessly scared walking down that dark alley. And when you turn a city into a dark alley, what do you expect out of people? Yeah, San Francisco got hit by the... We're going to get into San Francisco in a bit, right? Anyhow, the Uniparty. I saw this and at first I was just like, yeah, good point. Yeah, look, the Democrats are running up debt, burning up our money, burning up our country. But then I realized that there was like a little rhino horn. Very clever. Got the elephant trunk in there. Uniparty. Well, that's why Purple State and true centralist parties are needed. We need to combat the idiotic shit that comes from both sides. All right? Yes, in some cases, the Republicans have the right answer. And in other cases, the Democrats have the right answer. But what we should be operating on is looking at both sides and using what works and discarding what doesn't work. It doesn't matter if it's an R or a D. If it works, it works. Hey. Pro-BLM business that supported Anonymous Zone CHOP sues Seattle over extensive property damage caused by rioters and the hostile occupation. Molly Moon's homemade ice cream. I hope these people get boycotted right the hell out of business. Because these people were culpable in the whole thing. They went along with it. They put up the signs. They participated in the things. And at one point, and even a month after the occupation, they did not allow armed police officers inside their business. Police officers, Molly Moon's is a gun-free zone. Please do not come inside if you are wearing a firearm. What the fuck? You're now going to turn around and say that the city didn't provide enough cops, but yet you wouldn't let them in your business. This is the liberal nonsense that just makes me despise them. You support BLM. You support the Chaz zone. You don't allow police officers into your establishment. And then when your establishment is fucking vandalized, you're going to sue the city for not providing enough cops. Boom. And here we go again with some more nonsense. Texas buses migrants to Los Angeles in protest of Biden's border policy. That's the cover story. This is not a protest, all right? This is a necessity. Look at the fucking numbers. If you are not hip to this subject, look at the numbers and realize they're coming along the border, north and south at this point, but mostly down at the south. And it impacts the communities that are on the border, but they are America's border. They are America's problem, America's burden. And guess what, LA? You have to bear some of that burden. But look what's said instead, right? This is Bass coming out, talking out her ass. Bass talking out her ass, yeah. Anyhow, back to this. This did not catch us off guard, nor will it intimidate us. What the fuck are you talking about? Y'all want to be a sanctuary city, y'all sanctuary city. Boom, it's simple. It's simple. And you keep in mind, Catholic nuns will be at the front lines trying to help these people. So remember that when you think about like what the Dodgers just did. Bass, scathing statement. It's abhorrent that an American elected official is using human beings as pawns in his cheap political games. Spread the wealth, okay? Spread the fucking wealth. Walk the walk. If you want to be all about inclusion and diversity and all these liberal progressive policies like sanctuary cities, then you got to bear the brunt of it to some degree. And we're talking about like 24. I mean, LA is a fucked up place right now. I'll tell you that, man. I work there every single day. This isn't going to help. But close the border. It's not a matter of protest. It's a matter of necessity right now. Look up what's going on in El Paso, man. And she knew. She said she's known. She's been planning on this, saying that she'd be a recipient of what she calls a despicable stunt that Republican governors have grown so fond of. Really? So what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to keep all the people, even though... Is that the plan? Is that the plan? That you want all these people to stay in places like Texas and Florida or wherever, and then they'll become Democrats and overthrow the Republicans? Because then, if that happens, even more people will be coming across the border. Then what? They're all in Texas? They're all in the southern states where they're crossing? What? You want to let them all in? There's not enough room for them in El Paso. Got to ship them somewhere, right? Whew. San Francisco loses another large downtown business. Empty offices, abandoned malls, concerns over crime. The Golden City is losing its luster. And why? Because of Democrat policies. They can say whatever they want about bringing in the money and subsidizing red states. Great. But if you have all of those advantages, if you have all of that money from the tech sector, why is your flagship city crumbling? You want to blame the pandemic? Sure, the pandemic didn't help. But you really think that the street zombies are going to bring people back? Foot traffic down 60%. They have so much office space available right now, they could house 92,000 people. It's a lot. Westfield Mall is just dropping control of its namesake shopping center. Just returning it to the lender. Hotels returning to their lender. Think that's going to help? No. And sure, right there, you know, a building sold for less, 75% less. They just hand stuff back there now because it's not worth it. Their policies fail. Here's another one. Soft on crime policies. A pregnant woman in Seattle. Guy just walked up and blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on. This is a guy who had a lengthy criminal record, and the gun was stolen. She was 32 weeks pregnant. Her and her husband just driving. Guy walks up and shoots him. He had mental health issues. He stole the gun. Again, you don't do anything about stolen guns. Gun control this and gun control that. But then when you have people who break the law using guns, you figure out ways to let them go. I mean, I say that so much. I'm like a broken record. You know? But, you know, when they try to clean up the act, like London Breed here, and this is where I'm starting to see that there's two parties within the Democrats right now. You know, when London Breed cracks down on them, you know, the supervisor, Leftington here, you know, brings up that, you know, black, brown, and indigenous communities nationwide have been disproportionately impacted by racist drug policies. Okay, so that doesn't mean just let them get away with it. It means fix the racist drug policies. Or are they racist? It's another question. Here we go, London Breed responded. Another white man who's talking about black and brown people as if you're the savior of those people and you speak for them. So London Breed seems like she's a Democrat. I mean, she's a Democrat. And what she's saying is, hey, white people, you're not the savior. Because the liberals on the far left, they believe they are the white saviors. They're just going to, you know, boom. Breed brought up this point. Of everyone who was arrested and offered services, 0 have accepted. We will offer people help, but then when they refuse, we won't just let them put themselves and others in danger. That is not what the radical left is saying. Okay? The radical left says you must continue to release them. Don't even arrest them in the first place. I'm a product of that. If I wasn't arrested and set in front of a judge, I'd be dead right now. Period. Yeah, Garth Brooks faces boycott, saying that his bar will serve Bud Light. Oh my God, Garth Brooks opens gay bar. Yeah, and they're pissed off. Okay, whatever. And as in Brooks' own words, if you're an asshole, there are plenty of other places to drink. Boom. And that's what we need to do. This guy right here, who was actually a Republican who ran for Congress, I guess, now I delete every Garth Brooks song from my collection. Never again, Garth. How about this gem? We don't put up with that. You know why? We're Americans, bro. We fight for what's right. We fight for what's true. We don't cater to mental illness. No, Garth Brooks. Go hide under a rock. What? Seriously? We don't cater to mental illness. Wow. Okay. All right. Wow, that's a hot take there, TikToker. Let's move on. Canada's wildfires. Our reminder, climate warriors have it all wrong. Now, I want to get in this. This isn't about them being wrong. But when they do say things like this, that, a smoke signal that it's time to stop financing fossil fuel projects. How are fossil fuels involved in the fire and all the toxic smoke going into New York? There's zero evidence that any of this had anything to do with climate change. Forest fires are as old as the earth. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. But the real reason, and the real reason behind California's 2020 disasters, is environmentalism. They imagine that natural is always better. Greens have pushed to stop controlled burns that clean out bush and debris, and so make it less likely fires grow uncontrollably. Fires need fuel. Remove the fuel. Okay? Leave the trees, take the debris. Leave the trees, take the debris. How's that for a new one? But that's the reality of it. See, if they spin it into climate control, then they dodge what really needs to be done. And that's the problem with this. What needs to be done is forests need to be managed. That's it. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Doesn't need to be spun into something. But that's what they do. The shortage of funding for Canadian for forest fire control. That's where they save money. But once again, they bow to enviro sentiment and ignore the science. In California in 2020 alone, were twice as much of all the state's greenhouse cuts over the previous 16 years. So, forest fires obviously are horrible for the environment. So controlling them, containing them before they get out of hand, seems like a wise idea and a green idea. I'm not going to get into all of these. There's some stuff about New York, because now New York wants to go all electric. We're going to skip that. I'm not skipping this. Biden, here's the bottom line. Look, we're the ones who caused the problems, the United States. We cleared all our land. We did all the things that to make things more easier for us to make money. Not a bad thing at the time. We're to blame? We're to blame. We've reduced like 1 billion tons in 10 years. The UK 200, but the increases. Look at that. China up 2 million tons. India up 800 million tons. So blaming us? And even if you were to make those cuts that they want to make on us, it's not going to achieve anything. There's plans in place right now to limit the amount of methane that comes out of fossil fuel production and coal production. Move with it. Go with it. You upgrade the existing systems. But what they're trying to do is just grind us to a fucking halt. Real quick, Southern Baptists say no to women pastors. It doesn't really matter, but what I find absolutely ridiculous is that in Kentucky, the woman pastor was there for 30 years. Are we seeing a new attack on women? It feels that way. Watch this space and we'll see what happens. Real quick on this one, Amazon confirms they shut off a man's smart home because a random guy said he was racist. Yeah. And they confirmed this in the UK. They claim they shut down his system because when a delivery driver came, He thought he heard it say something racist. So they literally shut down his smart home. Do you see what that would mean? The government is going to use friendly corporations to circumnavigate U.S. laws and especially the Constitution. They've already done it with free speech. They've already managed to block ahead of the election certain information that may have been vital to people's decision making. But yeah, Amazon just shut down their house. In China, one of the world's biggest polluters, they've got a new nuclear reactor that burns thorium. You don't even need water to cool it. You can put it in the middle of the desert. But this isn't to clean up their act. This is to make money. Do you think China is producing batteries for electric vehicles and electric vehicles for their own people and solar panels and windmill blades and now a new nuclear reactor? You think they're doing it because they care about the planet? No, they care about money. They're doing it for money. And that's the way things should be done. That's the way things should be done. Let the market decide which direction we're going in. Sure, I don't mind if we all end up in electric vehicles someday when the technology is ready and the price comes down and service and replacing batteries and blah, 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 blah. But right now, that's just not there. That's why they're struggling. That's why the Biden administration has to pump so much money into them. But yeah, a molten salt reactor could be built in areas far away from large bodies of water. Why are we not exploring that here? I mean, that makes no sense. Grand jury indicted Perry, and then right away, another criminal gets on a subway and starts punching people and ends up being fatally stabbed. That guy was a black guy, so of course he was arrested, treated a little bit differently. But, then again, I would argue that a chokehold versus a stabbing, it's somewhat different in the eyes of the police. One seems a little could be a little fishy. The other one sounds a little more like an accident. But, hopefully, I'm obviously giving them the benefit of the doubt on that because it could just be straight up racism. But who bears the real responsibility for this? It's the city. They've made it. They've made it that way. It's a failed experiment, and it's not working. And that's the thing about Purple State. I don't want to continue experiments well past the conclusion point. In other words, if it's a bad idea, let's just ditch it. Doesn't that make more sense? I mean, it is common sense. If it's not working, change it. Sure, we used to have a very racist system in law and order. It needed to change. But instead, it's just release all the criminals, do nothing about it. Let them do whatever they want. Let society completely fall apart because cops and judges and the such were racist back then. Instead of dealing with getting rid of the racism that exists, but still upholding the law. Isn't that make more sense? Doesn't that make more sense? Look at me go. And I've loved my time with you today. And if you loved your time with me, please like, subscribe, multiply, all of that, man. Let's bring the country together. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Peace, y'all. Love one another. Love will always win. Fourth of July. Fourth.